So now we've moved to a new location where we're going to provide, again, a mixture between the ambient light and artificial light. As always, the first step is for us to measure the ambient light. And in this case, we have two distinctly different conditions for the ambient light. The light that's going to reach her shoulder and her face from the direct sun is measuring at f/28.7, so approximately f4. Now the light on the shadow side, though, is reading f/28.1. So distinctly about an f-stop of difference between the shadow side and the highlight side. That's going to be fine for this application. But first, before we add a flashback into the equation, we'll have Bernadette hold the California Sunbounce, and we'll show how we can reflect light back onto our subject to again create a warming trend with the gold sunlight colored California Sunbounce, as well as to create separation because our model is being lit by not only the ambient light but also from the reflections. However, this leaves us very limited ability to control where we want the light to come from, because we have to deal with the fact that only one position is going to really properly reflect the sunlight back onto the model. And so we'd rather use artificial lights in many cases. Since we've got two of them right here, we'll go back to using these in that respects. Again, we're still using the SB800 flashes, and we're going to then have one flash again on the camera as a master, and we're still using the LumaQuest with a gold insert to give a nice warming color temperature to the flash, as well as to give us some diffusion and to move the flash somewhat off camera. So we still have enough ambient light to add to this picture, but in this case we're going to use the ambient light, being the sunlight, as a fill light and use our two flashes to combine together to create both an illumination and an off-camera illumination so that our fill light becomes less significant. So once we've got her more directly in the sunlight, then we have to again make a decision as to how much ambient light that we're going to use. So in this case we're going to use the ambient light for about half of the exposure. Then we're going to go ahead and add some fill flash to that. Using the on-camera flash first, we can provide just enough illumination to somewhat soften the shadows that the sunlight is providing. But if we add both the flash units, then again we can also create both depth and dimension and separation from our model to our background. So in having both of our light sources here from the right-hand side of the picture, we are actually creating separation both by highlighting one side of her and creating the absence of light or a little bit of a shadow on the other side. And this is part of what is separating her from the background. Well, we've positioned our model in a new position so that we can shoot down onto her with only the water reflecting back up to us in the background. Again, as always, we need to take our ambient meter reading settings. Now at 2/50th of a second, we've got here in the direct sunlight side f8.4, but on the shadow side, we've got 20.7. This is far too much diversity for the camera to digest, and we would either need to overexpose one side or underexpose the other side. That's the purpose of having our on-camera flash, to help balance that out. We can do headshots to full-length shots, but in this case, because the sunlight is streaming through primarily on her face and not so much on her body, we're creating some funny shadows on her with the light coming through the trees. So in that capacity, we want to add a little bit more light than what we can get out of the on-camera flash. We also want to increase the size of our light source. First, we use just the reflector on a Lumedyne flash head. This is already going to be significantly larger than the flash coming from the front of a Nikon Flash. And by using the diffuser cover, we also have the ability to soften that light a bit more. Secondly, we'll add the 18-inch OctiBank so that we can then show the difference, not only illuminating her from our previous position where we had the Nikon Flash, then the Lumedyne Flash. So we have a softer transition of the shadows across her face and across her body there. But if we want that to be softer still, then rather than turning the power up, and we'll go ahead and turn it down by 2 f-stops, because we're going to bring this half the distance to her. Every time that we double the distance, we lose 2 f-stops, but every time that we move twice as close, we'll gain 2 f-stops. This will still be well out of the field of view, but now this light source will be significantly larger in comparison to the ambient light. Fortunately, it's a Lumedyne, and while we don't intend for them to fall over, it's not really a question of if they'll fall over, but rather a question of when. So the Lumedyne Signature Series head, made out of metal, can easily sustain a fall like that into the dirt, but also has the ability to sustain a fall like that even onto the concrete. The only really fragile part of the equation is the glass flash tube. But here, when we move the OctiBank closer, we also show how we can make even a 19-inch OctiBank a significantly larger and apparently softer light source for our model.